Welcome back to another video. My name is Derek, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Microsoft Surface Book 2. This is the 15-incher. Unfortunately, this tablet laptop, still don't know what you would call this, only turns on when it's plugged into a charger, which means the batteries have gone bad and we need to replace them. These are extremely difficult to replace. In fact, iFixit has given this a repairability 1 out of 10. It's not a 0 out of 10, but it's dang close. So today I'm going to show you how to replace the battery on the display side of things. Let's get into the video. Microsoft tablets and laptops are arguably some of the most difficult devices to work on due to the fact that they are extremely difficult to open even for seasoned techs. Hopefully today I'm able to convey that, but also convey tips and tricks on how to successfully work on them so they don't cost you more to fix them than otherwise planned for. The first thing that we need to do is detach the tablet from the keyboard. And if it's completely dead, the only way to do it is to physically unlock it, which means we're going to count in the holes here from the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you push in until you make contact with a little lever. And if you push on that lever, it'll pop just like so. And then we'll go over to the other side and do the same thing, counting from the bottom. It's kind of hard to tell if it's 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Push in, and then it'll come off. I've done a video on how to do the battery, so if you're looking for that, I'll link it right here. But today we're going to focus on the top battery, the top side. These displays are extremely delicate, and there's a high risk of breaking them when opening them. And the touch is integrated into the glass, which means if you crack the glass, you lose touch, which is unfortunate with such an expensive part. Along with that, there's a bunch of sensitive bits around the border, including the flex cables, mesh that will shrink under temperature, and plastic that'll deform if you use too much heat. Also, given that there is a backlight, using something like isopropyl alcohol to help with the border is not really an option. During this repair, we want to do everything we can to avoid having to use metal. Metal will more likely than not crack the glass. But what I'm going to be using is this thin piece of plastic. This is the OCA protector film. It's not too thick, not too thin, so it's rigid enough to act like the edge of a razor blade, but it also is it's hard to damage stuff with plastics that are this flimsy and thin. Not saying you can't cut through a flex cable with this, but it would be harder to than, say, anything metal. So we're going to use it in the assistance of working around and cutting through the adhesive so we can lift the display off, hopefully without breaking it. Alright, for the first step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rubric station. I'm going to set it around 250 degrees Celsius, and I may adjust that depending on how it's acting. Might go down, might go up. But what we're going to do, I've got it on a kind of a medium to low airflow, and I'm just going to warm up the edge here with this reduction nozzle to kind of keep it isolated on the border. Got to be careful right here around the speaker, as you can melt the little mesh that's in there, and then it just won't look good when you're done. And I'm going to take my plastic sheet and we'll push into that little gap there, and I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth, cutting through the adhesive. And then once I'm in, I can move it up and down, and then we can gently go under the edge here and see if we can slide up the glass. And if it feels like it's too resistant, then I'll stop, take our hot air again, and we'll warm up that next section. And then we'll try to slide some more. If it ever slips out, we'll just go back to the beginning, push it in, and we'll slide up and keep working up the side. Alright, and at a certain point, when you've made your way far enough up, what we can then do is carefully slide in something that's just a little thicker to kind of hold it open for us and help in the removal process of the rest. So here I'll come down on the corner and we'll relieve some of the tension that we've put on that. Take our plastic, Gently try to get into the corner, and I'll heat it back up a little bit more, and then I can slide the plastic under it. Give it a little bit more, and then we'll move it again. And eventually the plastic will start to get pretty beat up. So when it's unusable, we'll just swap it out for another one. What I've found works the best over the years is as follows. I'll go to where the plastic gets caught up, then I'll take the plastic pick and I'll slide it gently towards it until I see a decent flex. You can see that flex there. It's not to where I'm pushing with the plastic too much, but it's enough that the flex is noticeable. Then I'll take the heat. We'll warm up that area for a few seconds. And you can actually see in the reflection that warped area kind of gets knocked out a little bit. And then I'll take the plastic and we'll slide it up that 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And then I will follow it up with the plastic, sliding it up that same distance until we get the same amount of tension as we did before. And basically I'm playing that tag game where I'm just chasing the plastic and the ripple all the way around. So I'll heat it and then I'll slide it and then we'll move the pick, heat it, slide it, move the pick. What's really quite nice is when you get to a certain area and you've gotten kind of a good portion of the screen up, you can actually just use the tension there to help support it instead of using the pick. Now, if I had a mirror, I'd tell you that I've seen even experienced techs that do this type of thing on a frequent basis take more than a 1/2 hour just to get this far. And at a certain point, we can get a nice bend in there, one that would make most techs uncomfortable. We'll heat up the area that's under stress, and you'll actually start to see it kind of pop away in the adhesive, and then we can take our plastic and with kind of a sawing motion cut through that next little segment and then repeat for all the way down the side. Alright, so when we have the flex cables exposed, here at the bottom what we can do is carefully go in to the display flex here, and there's a little bracket, and you can carefully pop it away just like that, and it helps hold down that connector, which we can also now pop by gently going in under it with a spudger and twisting, and then we can pop it down and lift the screen just a little bit more. And all I have left is basically this top section where the more sensitive frame is, along with the antennas and cameras and stuff. We have one more flex cable that jets in from the side here for the digitizer. It's got a much larger bracket that we can pop away. I'll carefully wedge a spudger in there. Let's see if we can pop it away. Just like work our way down to the other side, and it fell down inside, but with a little shake it falls out. Now I can go in there really carefully and disconnect the digitizer flex cable, and it too will just pop away like that. Now I'm just going to heat up the top side here, going back and forth until it wants to start to fold away a little bit. And put a little pick in there so it causes a little bit of tension in the screen. You can see it bowing slightly. And now I'm going to take the heat and we're going to go up and down the side here until it relaxes and starts to let go. I can already see it start to relax, in which case we can lift this up just a little bit more and continue with that process. Alright, and I'm going to wedge in something just a little bit taller. You can see we're making quite a bit of progress only within the span of a few minutes. And then we'll keep heating up the edge. Hopefully in the next few minutes the screen will relax enough for us to lift it off. And eventually it'll get to an angle where it won't take much effort to slice through the remaining adhesive. And eventually you'll be able to pop the screen up and gently fold it back. And I'm going to take a piece of plastic and we're going to carefully go along the perimeter and gently slice through any remaining adhesive, making sure we don't damage any of the components. The antennas like to stick up at the top, so you got to make sure they cut away without cutting them. I'll show you what I mean in a second. You can see up there one of the antennas is kind of sticking. the other popped off. We need to make sure we don't damage it any more than it might have already been. And fortunately enough, didn't damage the antenna. Kind of mangled the Captain tape part of it, but it flattens out nicely like that. So the hard part is done. As you can see, we had a little bit of swelling in these batteries. That's why they're needing to be replaced. They're no longer taking a charge. Now the display will need to go around the border. Carefully peel off all of the old adhesive so we can apply new adhesive before closing it up, but we'll set this aside for now. And what's really kind of neat now is you can see how the hinge works to release the display. When you stick this in, you'll find the little plastic piece here, and when you push on it, you can see how it'll push kind of up and it'll pop up the latch, which it typically does by this component activates, and it's able to do it by command when the actual device is on. So you can hear the wire there, and it has that system on both sides. You can kind of play a little song. To get to the battery, we do have a bunch of screws that we need to remove. You can see they're all scattered out throughout, so we can lift up the board enough to slide the battery out. The battery is also adhered, and so we will need to pry on it. It's got double-sided adhesive, and now that we don't have any backlight, we can add some isopropyl alcohol to help loosen up the adhesive under the battery cell and pop it free. Now, of course, using metal on a battery, unless you've done it 100 times, is not recommended. If you're worried, you can always switch to a plastic spudger and add more isopropyl alcohol under to loosen the adhesive so that it's much easier to pop out these cells. Alright, so on both sides, we'll just gently lift the battery cells. It's okay if they bend slightly as long as we're not puncturing them, because we're obviously going to be replacing it. And when it fully pops that, I'm just going to take one of the plastic sheets I use to help lift the screen, and we'll put it on top of the adhesive so that it doesn't re-stick. And we'll go over to the other side and we'll perform the same thing. Add some isopropyl alcohol and we'll wedge in a spudger and we'll pry it up. Should only take 30 seconds or so, just like that. Take a piece of plastic and put it in there so it doesn't re-stick. We'll get out a T4 screw bit and we'll start taking out all of the screws. We won't need to pull the board all the way out for this part to get the battery out. We just need enough clearance to extract the battery and put the new one where it needs to be. But if you want to take it all the way out, you can do that. Also at the bottom, we'll need to remove this large flex, so you can call it that, with all of its wires, the port that communicates with the keyboard. Once you've taken the screws out, you can pry up on the bracket here, and the whole thing kind of comes out of the frame. And then it'll pop out and allow you some access to lift the board a little bit. You have to be careful though. There are some antennas, for example this coax cable here, that we can disconnect. It's kind of at an awkward position though. So if we lift the board up here, you'll see it's down under the board here. We can first pop it out like that, and there we've got the coax cable disconnected. The digitizer flex, I'm going to carefully peel it away as well so that it doesn't have any tension on the connector. There's got some just some double-sided tape there. And now you can see how free the motherboard is for the battery extraction. For the actual removal of the battery, I'm going to take a spudger. We're going to go under the flex, and there's like a daughter board for the battery. And if we get under it, I'm actually going to add some isopropyl alcohol too as well. It's got some adhesive that holds it down, and there are some pillars that it lines up with so that it's in the right spot to make contact with the spring-loaded pins on the bottom side of the motherboard. So it's quite easy to align. It's just got that sticky tape. Once we pop it up, we should be able to carefully slide it on out from under the motherboard, just like that. And you can see the 6 contact points along with the little inserts where the pillars are. So it's been my experience that as soon as the alcohol evaporates, these become sticky enough to reuse. However, the adhesive around the border we will need to remove. I found that the best way to do that is to get one of these little chisel blades and carefully go along the edge without cutting anything. And you can see how clean it'll get the adhesive. This adhesive though, if you try to pull on it, for example right here, it's just going to tear. This adhesive does not pull off, but with the blade at the right angle, you can get it off. Sometimes on the kind of the plastic side of things, you can get away with pulling the adhesive. If you pull straight up, it'll break, but if you pull kind of going in the direction you need to travel, sometimes you get lucky and you can get the bulk of the adhesive, because this black adhesive is really annoying to work with. As you can see, it's now just tearing. And the little stranglers you can just pick up with something like this. You just whip them off. It works really good for small areas, but not large areas. It's just too much for it to handle. Alright, so I've got the display all prepped and taped up. We'll get out our new battery and we will proceed with installation. Alright, let's peel off the little plastic pieces. The process is pretty straightforward to install it. We'll just lift up the motherboard gently and we'll push the battery cells into kind of where they need to be. We won't let them stick down just yet, as we need to make sure that the battery connector area is lined up. We'll push on down the little battery daughter board, and then we'll make sure that we square up the cells so they're in their little spaces. And there's these little plastic pieces that do go inside of there on top of the guides. Kind of tricky to put back in once they've come out. You can kind of see how they sit on that little peg down inside of there. If I can get it to focus, we'll tighten up a screw, kind of hold it in place as we line this guy back up and push it back into its slot. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on this guy so it doesn't fall out from its little slot. But now I'm able to take the 2 screws and screw back this guy. The rest is pretty straightforward. We'll proceed with putting back all of the screws. And I almost forgot the coax cable. Gotta lift up the board here and carefully reconnect the coax cable here. It's a little awkward to reconnect the display flexes, so I like to connect this one at this angle first. I can push it down, get it to snap, and then we'll take our bracket that we had to pop off and snap it back on top. Then we'll set down the bottom of the screen, and this flex cable is a bit longer, which will allow us to reach up and connect it just like that. And then we can take the big bracket and put it back and let it snap into place. If for whatever reason you have any of the pieces that have bent out from prying on it, they easily bend back with just a little compression. And then we'll push down that bracket and let it kind of snap back in on all sides. And then we will gently set the top end, making sure everything's lined up. And then we'll compress it all on down. And the battery replacement is done. And for good measure, I'm going to take a little bit of glue and we'll slap this back inside there. Take a microfiber cloth with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, and we'll just wipe on down any of the squeeze out before it fully cures. And that's back on there. And now it's officially done. Will it turn on? There's our Microsoft logo. We'll wipe away some of these fingerprints real quick. Alright, got it on, and as you can see, the touch is working. You can see that we've got the touch working everywhere, which means we didn't damage it, and we'll just turn it off. Alright, and that is how to replace the battery in the top section. Again, if you need to see how the battery is replaced in the keyboard, I will link that video right here. Hopefully I was able to convey how tedious and time-consuming this type of repair is, and what you should expect when you get into something like this. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.